All right. Where was I? There was, in this period, another series of killings upon a farm near Newcastle late in this year, 1904. Something was killing poultry. The depredations were so persistent and the marauder was so evasive that persons who are said to be superstitious began to talk in a way that is said to be unenlightened. Then the body of an otter was found. The killing of poultry stopped. For a discussion of the conclusion to any normal logician looks obvious, see The Field, December 3rd, 1904. Here we learn that otters, though ordinarily living upon fish, do sometimes vary their diet. But no data upon persistent killing of poultry by otters came out. This body of an otter was found lying on a railroad line. France in the grip of military forces, August 1914. France was invaded, and the people of France knew that France was invaded. It is my expression that so they knew only because it was a conventional recognition. There were no wise men to say that reported bodies of men moving along roads had nothing to do with mutilated persons appearing in hospitals, and that only by coincidence was their devastation. The wise men of France did not give only a local explanation to every local occurrence, but of course correlated all as the manifestations of one invasion. Human eyes have been made to see human invaders. Wales in the grip of supernatural forces. People in England paid little attention at first, but then hysteria is mobbed across the border. To those of us who have some failings and now and then give a thought to correcting them if possible, but are mostly too busy to be bothered much, cyclones of emotions relating to states that are vaguely known as good and evil are most mysterious. In the Barmouth Advisor, it is said that in the first 3 months of this year, 1905, there had been admitted to the Denbigh Insane Asylum 16 patients whose dementias were attributed to the revival. It is probable that many cases were not reported. In the Liverpool Echo, November 25th, are accounts of 4 insane revivalists who were under restraint in their own homes. 3 cases in one town are told of in this newspaper of January 10th. The craze spread in England, and in some parts of England it was as intense as anywhere in Wales. At Bromley, a woman wrote a confession of sins, some of which it was said she could not have committed, and threw herself under a railroad train. In town after town, police stations were invaded by exhorters. Yeah. In both England and Wales, bands stood outside theaters calling upon people not to enter. In the same way, they tried to prevent attendance at football games. December 29th, wolf killed on a railroad line. It was at Cumwinton, which is near Carlisle, about 30 miles from Hexham. The body was found on a railroad line. Magnificent specimen of male gray wolf, total length 5 feet, measurement from foot to top of shoulder 30 inches. Captain Baines of Shotley Bridge went immediately to Cumwinton. He looked at the body of the wolf. He said that it was not his wolf. There was doubt in the newspapers. Everybody is supposed to know his own wolf, but when one's wolf was made material for a host of damaged suits, one's recognitions may be dimmed. This body of a wolf was found and killings of sheep stopped, but Captain Baines' denial that the wolf was his wolf was accepted by the Hexham Wolf Committee. Data were with him. He had reported the escape of his wolf, and the description was one record in the Shotley Bridge police station. Captain Baines' wolf was, in October, no magnificent full-grown specimen, but a cub, 4.5 months old, though nobody had paid any attention to Though nobody had paid attention to this circumstance, it had been pointed out in the Hexham Herald, October 15th. The wolf in Cumwinton was not identified according to my reading of the data. Nobody told of an escape of a grown wolf, though the news of this wolf's death was published throughout England. The animal may have come from somewhere far from England. Photographs of the wolf were sold as picture postal cards. People flocked to Cumwinton. Men in the show business offered to buy the body, but the decision of the railroad company was that the body had not been identified and belonged to the company. The head was preserved and it was sent to the central office in Derby. But what became of the Shotley Bridge wolf? All that can be said is that it disappeared. The mystery begins with this statement that, hold on, before I begin this statement. In October 1904, a wolf belonging to Captain Baines of Shotley Bridge escaped. And that about the same time began a slaughtering of sheep, but the Captain Baines wolf had nothing to do with the slaughter. Or the statement is that there was killing of sheep in Northumberland, and that then came news of the escape of a wolf by which the killing of a few sheep might be explained. But that then there were devourings which could not be attributed to a wolf. The wolf cub disappeared, and there appeared another wolf, this one of a size and strength to which the devourings could be attributed. Somewhere there was science. If it had been not for Captain Baines' prompt investigation, the reported differences between these two animals would have been overlooked or disbelieved, and the story would be simply that a wolf had escaped from Shotley Bridge, had ravaged, and had been killed at Cumwinton. But Captain Baines did investigate, and his statement that the wolf of Cumwinton was not his wolf was accepted. So then, instead of a satisfactory explanation, there was a new mystery. Where did the wolf of Cumwinton come from? There is something that is acting to kill off mysteries. Perhaps always and perhaps not always. It can be understood in commonplace terms. If luminous things can move like flying birds, are attracting attention at a Mr. Cannell appears and says that he has found a luminous owl. In the newspapers about the middle of February appeared a story that Captain Alexander Thompson of Tacoma, Washington, and I have looked this up, learning that a Captain Alexander Thompson did live in Tacoma about the year 1905, was walking along a street in Derby when he glanced in a taxidermist's window and there saw the supposed wolf's head. He recognized it not as the head of a wolf, but the head of a Malamute, an Alaskan sleigh dog, half wolf and half dog. This animal, with other Malamutes, had been taken to Liverpool for exhibition and had escaped in a street in Liverpool. Though I have not been able to find out the date, I have learned that there was such an exhibition in Liverpool. No date was mentioned by Captain Thompson. The owners of the Malamute had said nothing, and rather than to advertise, had put up with the loss because of their fear that there would be damages for sheep killing. Not in the streets of Liverpool, presumably. No support for this commonplace ending followed. Nothing more upon the subject is findable in Liverpool newspapers. Liverpool is 120 miles from Hexham. It is a story of an animal that escaped in Liverpool and, leaving no trail of slaughtering behind it, went to a distant part of England, exactly to a place where a young wolf was at large, and there slaughtered like a wolf. I prefer to think that the animal of Cumwinton was not a Malamute. Derby Mercury, February 22. That the animal had been identified as a wolf by Mr. A. S. Hutchinson, taxidermist, to the Manchester Museum of Natural History. Liverpool Echo, December 31st. That the animal had been identified as a wolf by a representative of the Bostock and Cumbel Circus who had traveled from Edinburgh to see the body. Edinburgh. Killing of poultry and the body of an otter on the railroad line, and the killing of poultry stopped. Or that there may be occult things beings and events, and that also there may be something of the nature of an occult police force which operates to divert human suspicions and to supply explanations that are good enough for whatever somewhat of the nature of minds being human beings have, or that if there be occult mischief. Damn, he gets all over the place. Or that, if there be occulted mischief makers and occult ravagers, they may be of a world also of other beings that are acting to check them and to explain them, not benevolently, but to divert suspicion from themselves, because they, too, may be exploiting life upon this earth, but in ways more subtle and in orderly or organized fashion. We have noticed in investigating obscure or occult phenomena or alleged phenomena that sometimes in matters that are now widely supposed to be rank superstitions, orthodox scientists are not so uncompromising in their oppositions as are those who have not investigated. In the New Orleans Medical and Surgical Journal, April 1894, is an account of a case of spontaneous combustion of human bodies. The account is by Dr. Arden Hava, not as observed by him, but as reported by his father. In Science 10 100 is quoted a paper that was read by Dr. B.H. Hartwell of Ayer, Massachusetts, before the Massachusetts Medico Legal Society. It was Dr. Hartwell's statement that upon May 12, 1890, while driving through a forest near Ayer, excuse me, he had been called and going into the wood, saw in a clearing the crouched form of a woman. Fire, which was not from clothing, was consuming her shoulders, both sides of the abdomen, and both legs. See Dr. Dixon Mann's Forensic Medicine, edition of 1922, page 216. Here cases are told of and are accepted as veritable, such as the case of a woman consumed so by fire that on the floor of her room there was only a pile of calcined bones left of her. The fire, if in an ordinary sense it was fire, must have been of the intensity of a furnace, but a tablecloth only 3 feet from the pile of cinders was unscorched. There are other such records. I think that our data relate not to spontaneous combustion of human bodies, but to things or beings that, with a flaming process, consume men and women, but, like werewolves, are alleged werewolves mostly pick out women. Occurrences of this winter of 1904-5 again. Early in February in London, a woman who was sitting asleep before a fire in a grate awoke, finding herself flaming. A commonplace explanation would seem to be sufficient. Nevertheless, it is a story of mysterious burns, as worded by Lloyd's Weekly News, February 5th. A coroner had expressed an inability to understand. In commenting upon the case, the coroner had said that a cinder might have shot from the grate, igniting this woman's clothes, but that she had been sitting facing the fire and that the burns were on her back. Upon the morning of February 26th, at Butlock Heath, near Southampton, neighbors of an old couple named Kiley heard a scratching sound. They entered the house and found it in flames inside. Kiley was found burned to death on the floor. Mrs. Kiley, burned to death, was sitting in a chair in the same room, badly charred but recognizable. A table was overturned and a broken lamp was on the floor. So there seems to be an obvious explanation. Hold on. Eyeballs are glazing over. But at the inquest, it was said that an examination of this lamp showed that it could not have caused the fire. The verdict was accidental death, but by what means they, the jury, were unable to determine. Both bodies had been fully dressed, judging by fragments of cloths. This indicates that the Kileys had been burned before their time for going to bed. Hours later, the house was in flames. At the inquest, the mystery was that two persons, neither of whom had cried for help, presumably not asleep in an ordinary sense, should have been burned to death in a fire that did not manifest as a general fire until hours later. Something had overturned a table. A lamp was broken. Again, the phenomenon of scene shifting. Soon after the killing of poultry ceased near Newcastle, there were uncanny occurrences upon Binbrook Farm near Great Grimsby. There is an account in the journal SPR 12 138 by the Reverend A.C. Custance of Binbrook Rectory. There was no confession this time, but this time the girl in the case, the young housemaid again, was in no condition to be dragged to the police station. It will not be easy to think that it was trickery by the girl in this case. The story is that objects were thrown about rooms, that 3 times near a not very good or big fire, things burst into flames, and that finally a servant girl was burned or was attacked by something that burned her. In the Liverpool Echo, January 25th, is published a letter from a school teacher of Brook, in which it is said that a blanket had been found burning in a room in which there was no fireplace. According to the report by Colonel Taylor to the SPR, the first manifestations occurred upon the 31st of December. Something was killing chickens in the farmyard, and in the hen house. All were killed in the same way, a vampirish way. Their throats were torn. I go to a newspaper for an account of phenomena in Brook. The writer was so far from prejudice in favor of occult phenomena that he began by saying, "Superstition dies hard." In the Louth and North Lincolnshire News, January 28th, he tells of objects that unaccountably fell from shelves in the farmhouse and of mysterious transportations of objects, according to allegations. A story that greatly dismays the unsophisticated is that of a servant girl who, while sweeping the floor, was badly burned on the back. This is how the farmer relates it. Our servant girl, whom we had taken from the workhouse, and who had neither kiln nor friend in the world that she knows of, was sweeping the kitchen. There was a very small fire in the grate. There was a guard there so that no one can come within 2 feet or more of the fire, and she was at the other end of the room and had not been near. I suddenly came into the kitchen, and there she was, sweeping away, while the back of her dress was afire. She looked around as I shouted, and seeing the flames rush through the door, she tripped, and I smothered the fire out with wet sacks. But she was terribly burned, and she is at the Louth Hospital now in terrible pain. This last sentence is very true. Yesterday, our representative called at the hospital and was informed that the girl was burnt extensively on the back and lies in critical condition. She adheres to the belief that she was in the middle of the room when her clothes ignited. A great deal in trying to understand this occurrence depends upon what will be thought of the unseen killing of chickens. Out of 250 fowls, Mr. White says that he has only 24 left. They have all been killed in the same weird way. The skin around the neck from the head to the breast has been pulled off and the windpipe drawn from its place and snapped. The fowl house has been watched night and day, and whenever examined, 4 or 5 birds would be found dead. In London, a woman sat asleep near a grate. Something, as if taking advantage of this means of commonplace explanation, burned her behind her. Perhaps a being of incendiary appetite had crept up behind her, but I had no data upon which so to speculate. But if we accept that in Binbrook Farm, something was savagely killing chickens, we accept that whatever we mean by a being was there. It seems that in the little time taken by the farmer to put out the fire of the burning girl, she could not have been badly scorched. Then the suggestion is that, unknown to her, something behind her was burning her, and that she was unconscious of her own scorching flesh. All the stories are notable for absence of outcry or seeming unconsciousness of victims that something was consuming them. The town of Market Raisin is near Binbrook Farm. The address of the clergyman who reported to the SPR the fires and the slaughterings of chickens upon the farm is Binbrook Rectory, Market Raisin. Upon January 16th, as told in the Louth and North Lincolnshire News, January 21st, there was in a chicken house at Market Raisin a fire in which 57 chickens were consumed. Perhaps a fire in a chicken house is not much of a circumstance to record, but I note that it is said that how this fire started could not be found. The girl of Benbrook Farm was taken to the Louth Hospital. In Lloyd's Weekly News, February 5th, there is an account of mysterious burns. It is the case of Ashton Claude, a man aged 75 who, the week before, had died in the Louth Hospital. It is said that he had fallen into a grate while putting coals in it, and that for some reason, probably because of his rheumatism, had been unable to rise and had been fatally burned. But a witness at the very inquest is quoted. If there was a fire in the fireplace, it was very little. All around every place that we have noted, the revival was simmering, seething, or raging. In Leeds, women who said that they were directed by visions stood in the streets, stopping cars, trying to compel passengers to join them. A man in Turnbridge Wells, taking an exhortation literally, chopped his right hand off. Holy dancers appeared in London. At Driffield, someone led a procession every night, trundling his coffin ahead of him. And all this in England. And in England, it is very much the custom to call attention to freaks and extravagances in other parts of the world, or more particularly in one other part of the world, as if only there occurred all the freaks and extravagances. Riots broke out in Liverpool, where the revivalists, with a medieval enthusiasm, attacked Catholics. The Liverpool City Council ensured certain so-called religious meetings, which create danger to life and property. Also, at Southend, there were processions of shouters from which rushed missionaries to slug Catholics and to sling bricks at houses in which lived Catholics. In the Liverpool Echo, February 6th, is quoted a magistrate who said to a complainant who, because of differences in a general doctrine of loving one's neighbors, had been assaulted. When you see one of these processions, you should run away as you would from a mad bull. Upon all the occurrences that we have noted was the one enveloping phenomenon of the revival. There is scarcely a place that I have mentioned in any of the accounts that was unagitated. Why is it that youngsters have so much to do with psychic phenomena? I have gone into that subject according to my notions. Well, then, when a whole nation or host of its people goes primitive or goes into atavism or reverts religiously, it may be that conditions arise that are susceptible to phenomena that are repelled by matured mentality. A hard-headed materialist says dogmatically, there are no occult phenomena. Perhaps he is right about this relatively to himself, but what he says may not apply to children, when at least to a considerable degree a nation goes childish with medievalism. It may be upon itself an invasion of phenomena that in the Middle Ages were common, but that were discouraged or alarmed and were driven more to concealment when minds grew up somewhat. If we accept that there is teleportation and that there are occult beings, that is going so far that we may as well consider the notion that to stop inquiry, a marauding thing, to divert suspicion, teleported from somewhere in Central Europe, a wolf to England, or that there may be something of the nature of an occult police force which checks mischief and slaughter by the criminals of its kind and takes teleportive means to remove suspicion, often solving one problem only by making another, but relying upon conventionalizations of human thought to supply cloakery. The killing of poultry, the body on the railroad line, stoppage, scene shifting. The killing of sheep, the body on the railroad line, stoppage, farm and home, March 16th. That hardly had the wolf been killed in Cumwinton in the north of England when farmers in the south of England, especially in the districts between Turnbridge and Sevenoaks, Kent, began to tell of mysterious attacks upon their flocks. Sometimes 3 or 4 sheep would be found dying in one flock, having in nearly every case been bitten in the shoulder and disemboweled. Many persons had caught sight of the animal and one man had shot it. The inhabitants were living in a state of terror, and so on the 1st of March, a search party of 60 guns beat the woods in an endeavor to put an end to the depredations. A big dog, another Malamute, nothing. This resulted in its being found and dispatched by one of Mr. R.K. Hodgson's gamekeepers, the animal being pronounced on examination to be a jackal. The story of the shooting of a jackal in Kent is told in the London newspapers. See the Times, March 2nd. There is no findable explanation nor attempted explanation of how the animal got there. Beyond the mere statement of the shooting, there is not another line upon this extraordinary appearance of an exotic animal in England findable in any London newspaper. It was in provincial newspapers that I came upon more of the story. Blyth News, March 14th. The Indian jackal, which was killed recently near Sevenoaks, Kent, after destroying sheep and game to the value of £100, is attracting attention in the shop windows of a Derby taxidermist. Derby Mercury, March 15th, that the body of this jackal was upon exhibition in the studio of Mr. A.S. Hutchinson, London Road, Derby.